Before we begin, verify that your clearance is active. If you want continued access to restricted aviation cases, unsolved anomalies, and passenger files the government never released to the public, subscribe to Project Echo now. Unauthorized personnel should not proceed. Case 44D began on March 8, 1998, at Hartsfield International Airport in Atlanta. Flight LD-207, a routine commercial route bound for Denver, prepared for boarding under normal conditions. Passenger counts matched the manifest exactly. 184 occupants, including crew. Nothing unusual was detected. The first anomaly occurred at 7:14 a.m., recorded on Gate C-12's surveillance camera. A man entered the boarding line without passing through the terminal entrance. He simply appeared in frame, not walking into view, but present from one frame to the next. The man carried no luggage, no coat, no boarding pass in hand, yet the gate agent scanned his ticket. The scanner beeped green. Witnesses described him as forgettable, not threatening, not unusual, simply a face that slipped through memory. A man impossible to describe 5 minutes later. Surveillance footage confirmed this effect. His facial features blurred slightly under motion, as if the VHS tape struggled to maintain detail. His clothing, gray, indistinct, without brand or stitching, appeared too smooth, lacking folds. Gate agent Marla Keene later stated she remembered checking him in, but could not recall what he looked like, what he said, or even what section he was assigned to. She recalls, however, a sensation she described as pressure behind my eyes, as though a silent headache bloomed the moment she scanned his ticket. The manifest printed moments later listed C-27B as occupied by 3 dashes, no name, no ticket ID, no frequent flyer number, no purchase history. The system did not flag this as an error. Keene dismissed it as a printer glitch. She initialed the clipboard, unaware she had just approved a passenger the airline would later claim had never existed. At 7:22 a.m., 27B boarded the plane. Passengers recall him moving down the aisle with a strange, softened motion, like someone walking underwater. Seat 27A's occupant, a school teacher named Diane Hartwell, remembered feeling cold as he passed a drop in temperature of nearly 5 degrees, according to cabin sensors. Several passengers reported an odor, faint, metallic, and sterile, like the inside of medical packaging. When questioned later, they disagreed on his height, his hair color, his clothing, and even his age, but all agreed on one detail: he didn't blink. At 7:31 a.m., the aircraft doors closed. The cabin crew performed their checks. No one noticed that 27B had not fastened his seatbelt. No one noticed him at all. Flight LD-207 pushed back from the gate at 7:36 a.m. The takeoff roll began at 7:42 a.m. All black box telemetry reads normal until the plane reached 19,000 feet. Then the second anomaly occurred. Passenger Hartwell pressed her call button. She claimed the man in 27B was glitching. Her exact words: "He's not moving right. He's too still. He's wrong." Flight attendant Jenna Ruiz approached row 27. According to her statement, she saw the man sitting upright, hands on his knees, staring forward, but she could not count his fingers. The shapes at the ends of his hands blurred, shifting slightly. Ruiz blinked. The shapes stabilized into 5 fingers. She assumed exhaustion and stepped away. Moments later, the third anomaly occurred. Seat pressure sensors detected weight fluctuations in 27 bites, rising and dropping by as much as 40 pounds in a single second. Thermal imaging in the cabin registered the passenger at a temperature indistinguishable from the background. He produced no measurable heat. Ruiz checked again. The man was still unmoving. She offered him water. He did not respond. He did not turn. He did not acknowledge her presence. At 7:58 a.m., 27B turned his head not gradually, but in one smooth, continuous motion, lacking intermediate muscle transitions. Passengers heard a faint clicking sound, like knuckles cracking underwater. Then he spoke, the sentence no one could repeat afterward. Not because they forgot, but because the sound failed to exist in any language. Black box audio records the noise as a garbled, inverted signal resembling reversed speech layered with static. Hartwell screamed. "Ruiz called the cockpit?" The first officer left his seat to intervene. When he reached row 27, the man's seat was empty. Passengers reacted in shock. Several pointed, insisting he had simply slid sideways and vanished. Others said he folded into himself like a collapsing shadow. The first officer checked beneath seats, compartments, lavatories, nothing. The cockpit was notified that the passenger had gone missing mid-flight. Then the fourth anomaly occurred. The cabin lights dimmed. The temperature dropped sharply, nearly 18 degrees, in less than 10 seconds. Frost formed on windows, and the seatbelt light flickered on, even though the switch had not been touched. Passengers heard footsteps in the aisle, but nothing was there. The black box recorded the footsteps too slow, measured, as though exploring the space. The first officer ordered everyone seated. Several passengers began crying. Ruiz later described the atmosphere as dead air, like the plane wasn't flying at all anymore. At 8:03 a.m., seat 27B registered wait again. The man had returned, sitting upright, hands on his knees, staring ahead as if he had never moved. Ruiz refused to approach him a second time. The cockpit was notified, and the captain requested priority landing due to a medical disturbance. ATC approved the request. Diversion point, Nashville. But before descent began, the fifth anomaly appeared. Flight data shows every cabin sensor, including carbon dioxide, humidity, and motion detectors, spiking simultaneously. Passengers reported hearing whispering layered across the cabin, each voice identical to the man in 27B. The black box recorded none of it. Instead, the audio captured a single tone, sustained, harmonic, and rising in frequency. At 8:12 a.m., the captain attempted to make an announcement. His microphone transmitted only static. Then 27B stood up. Not quickly, but with a smoothness so unnatural the motion resembled a marionette being drawn upward by invisible strings. Children began crying. One adult fainted. The man turned to face the aisle. His eyes were described as featureless, unfinished, or painted onto the wrong depth. Passengers reported the sensation of pressure behind their eyes, the same sensation Gate Agent Keene had felt earlier that morning. Black box audio captured the clicking sound again, but this time, the clicking responded to something outside the aircraft. ATC radar picked up a brief anomaly, a shadow moving alongside the plane at 29,000 feet. No known aircraft matched its signature. The shadow disappeared after 6 seconds. When it vanished, the man in 27B sat down again and closed his eyes for the first time. At 8:14 a.m., the captain once again attempted radio contact. This time, the transmission reached ATC, but the voice on the other end wasn't the captain's. The message came through in a flat, emotionless male tone. Altitude, stable. Cabin secure. Continue forward. Both the captain and first officer were recorded shouting over the channel, attempting to override the transmission. Their voices did not transmit. Only the unknown voice continued for another full minute. ATC asked for identification. The voice responded with a series of numbers, none matching any flight code, aircraft ID, or transponder tag. The moment the unknown voice ceased, the cabin lights flickered back to full brightness. Passengers collectively exhaled, unaware that the cockpit's entire radio panel had gone dead. The man in 27B remained still, eyes closed, hands on knees. His seatbelt untouched, fastened itself with a sharp metallic click. The temperature stabilized, though frost remained etched onto the windows in fractal patterns that resembled branching neurons. Ruiz approached row 27 cautiously, this time keeping a distance. She asked if the man needed medical attention. He did not respond, but her body cam captured something the other passengers could not see. His chest wasn't moving. He wasn't breathing. A faint distortion appeared around him, a shimmering, heat-like warping despite his body temperature being below measurable thresholds. Ruiz reported the anomaly to the captain. He instructed that no one approach the passenger again. Flight LD-27 began descent toward Nashville airspace. The first officer monitored the man, documenting his unmoving posture for the flight log. At 8:27 a.m., the sixth anomaly occurred. The seat behind 27B-28B registered sudden downward force, though it was unoccupied. The pressure spiked to 260 pounds, then vanished. Passenger Hartwell whispered that someone was sitting there now. Her voice trembled as she pointed to the indentation in the cushion. Her seatmate insisted. He saw the headrest bend, as if pressed from behind by something invisible. Audio sensors in the cabin recorded faint breathing, slow, deep, arrhythmic, originating directly behind 27B. Several passengers stood up in panic. The captain called for everyone to remain seated. A moment later, the breathing stopped. The seat cushion inflated back to normal shape. Passenger Hartwell fainted. The descent continued uninterrupted until the aircraft reached 11,000 feet. Then the seventh anomaly struck. Every cabin light surged to maximum brightness, flooding the interior with blinding white illumination. Some passengers screamed. Others shielded their eyes. Ruiz dropped her metal serving tray, and the tray remained suspended in midair for over 3 seconds. When gravity returned, the tray clattered to the floor. Passenger oxygen masks deployed, not from a cabin pressure change, but from an electronic override apparently triggered by a non-existent command. During this chaos, Flight LD-27 deviated 6 miles off its approach vector without pilot input. The black box recorded the captain shouting, "I've lost control of the stick." The man in 27B opened his eyes, not abruptly but slowly, as if waking from a deep, ancient sleep. Passengers nearest to him reported his pupils dilated into perfect black spheres. The frost patterns on the windows began to melt, forming thin streams that ran upward, defying gravity. Ruiz attempted to secure the aisle, but froze mid-step. Her breathing quickened. She later said she felt like someone else was breathing for her. The man lifted his left hand slightly. The frost streams on every window shifted direction to match the motion. Black box audio captured a soft hum layered beneath the cabin noise, harmonic, rising, structured like communication. The hum matched the unidentified signal transmitted earlier from the cockpit. Passenger cameras recorded the man slowly turning his head toward the window, as though listening to something outside the aircraft. Lightning flashed distantly, though radar confirmed clear skies. A shadow, long, smooth, featureless, glided across the clouds beside the plane. The hum in the cabin intensified. The shadow matched the aircraft's speed exactly, sliding past row 27 like a silent observer. Then it vanished below the plane. Immediately afterward, LD-27 jerked violently downward, dropping 600 feet in 2 seconds. Passengers screamed. Oxygen masks swung wildly. Luggage compartments burst open. The man in 27B remained perfectly still during the drop. Black box data shows something impossible. During the plunge, his weight registered as 0. Moments later, the aircraft stabilized without pilot intervention. The hum stopped. The lights dimmed. The temperature rose slightly, and the man blinked for the first time. Passenger Hartwell regained consciousness and whispered, "He isn't supposed to be here." Her body cam footage captured what no one else saw, a faint outline of a second figure sitting in 27B, overlapping the man's shape like a double exposure. Ruiz attempted to verify the passenger count. Her handheld device displayed 185 passengers, one more than boarded. She tried refreshing the data. The number increased to 186. She closed the device in panic. At 8:39 a.m., the cockpit received a direct transmission on an unused frequency. A voice, identical to the man's, spoke. "Do not land." When ATC asked for confirmation, the message repeated on every channel simultaneously. The captain overrode the signal, declaring an emergency landing protocol. The cabin lights flickered again. The overhead bins rattled. Frost began reforming along the ceiling. Passengers near row 27 reported hearing whispered phrases not in English, not in any recognizable language. The black box captured none of it. Then the man in 27B stood up for a second time. This time, the movement caused nearby seat frames to bend outward, as if his presence displaced physical space. Passenger cell phones glitched, screens fracturing with static. Seatback televisions displayed the same message on all screens. 27B is not human. Half the passengers began sobbing. Others prayed. The man took one step into the aisle. The cabin pressure fluctuated instantly, causing bags to collapse inward. He lifted his right hand, and every seatbelt in the cabin unlatched simultaneously. The lights shut off. The black box recorded one final phrase from the unknown entity. "Prepare for arrival." When the cabin lights died, the interior plunged into a darkness so complete that even emergency strips failed to engage. Passengers screamed. The plane shuddered not from turbulence, but from some internal shift, like the fuselage was being compressed by an invisible hand. The only sound was the rhythmic clicking now coming from every direction, above and below, inside the walls, as if the aircraft itself had begun speaking. A child cried out that someone was standing on the ceiling. Several adults confirmed seeing a silhouette moving upside down, as if gravity no longer applied in row 27. Infrared cabin sensors, reviewed after the incident, caught a blurred humanoid shape crawling along the overhead storage compartments, elongated limbs, distorted joints, eyes reflecting light like an animal's. The shape vanished when the lights flickered back on for half a second. In that momentary flash, the man from 27B appeared at the front of the cabin, though no one saw him move there. He simply reset, as though his previous position had been overridden. Passengers in the front rows recoiled in terror. Several attempted to flee toward the back of the plane, but found themselves disoriented, as though the aisle stretched or shortened unpredictably. A flight attendant near the galley described feeling a pressure wave pass through her body, numbing her limbs and erasing her sense of direction. The man raised his left hand. The frost on the window shot inward, forming branching veins across the cabin walls. The aircraft dipped sharply again, but this time, black box data showed the pilots had full control, yet the plane descended anyway, as if pulled by an external force. The hum returned, louder, layered, harmonic, rising in impossible complexity. Analysts later determined the sound was not random, but structured, following the mathematical architecture of speech. The man in 27 bytes opened his mouth. Not wide, but unnaturally smooth, like a mask peeling. The voice that emerged did not come from his mouth. It reverberated through the entire fuselage, vibrating through seats, metal, bone, and thought. Passengers clutched their heads in pain. Some bled from their noses. Several fainted instantly. The voice spoke. "We have arrived." At that moment, the cockpit windshield darkened entirely, as though submerged. Radar pinged incomprehensible readings. Altitude impossible, direction undefined, sky replaced by a void. The captain attempted to pull up. Controls resisted. He lost all contact. Their last recorded transmission was static layered with distant clicking. Inside the plane, Ruiz staggered toward the phone to call the cockpit, but her body cam showed the aisles stretching like a tunnel, elongating, compressing, shifting angles. The temperature dropped again. Ice formed on passengers' eyelashes. Something knocked from outside the aircraft, 3 heavy impacts. The hull dented inward slightly each time, as though struck by an enormous, unseen object. The plane's speed remained constant, altitude unchanged, yet physics no longer applied. Black box readings glitched, looping the same 3 seconds of flight data repeatedly. Passenger Hartwell awoke and screamed. He brought something with him. Her body cam recorded a silhouette outside the window, a tall, thin figure gliding alongside the plane, keeping perfect pace. The figure had no features, no face, no limbs in the human sense, only a smooth, reflective surface, like a body made of shadowed glass. When the figure turned its head toward the cabin, every window cracked simultaneously. Passengers shielded themselves as frost sprayed inward like exploding ice dust. The man in 27B lowered his hand. The figure vanished instantly. He turned to face the rear of the plane, and every overhead bin burst open at once, scattering luggage across the floor. Seatbelt buckles snapped shut again, rigid, restraining everyone in place. The man walked down the aisle. With each step, lights flickered, and shadows bent toward him unnaturally, as though drawn by gravity. His motion grew less human, more geometric, jerking, resetting, stepping in impossible angles. A passenger attempted to stand. His legs folded beneath him as though gravity reversed for him alone. Another reached out toward the man, and her arm distorted slightly, as if passing through heat vapor. The clicking intensified to a deafening crescendo. Black box audio captured a phrase in a distorted, harmonically layered voice. Manifest incomplete. Passengers later described a sudden, overwhelming certainty that the entity was searching for someone or something that should have been on the flight. The man stopped at row 14. He turned to face an empty seat -14C. Every seat sensor triggered at once. Weight, 73 kilograms. Occupant, unknown. The man placed his hand on the empty seat. The temperature in the cabin rose sharply, melting the frost entirely. The hum softened, the clicking slowed. For the first time, the passengers felt relief, a warmth almost comforting. Ruiz approached slowly, trembling. She asked the man, "What do you want?" The man tilted his head toward her. For a moment, his face stabilized, faint features emerging, almost human. Then his expression vanished. Skin smoothed, detail erased. He whispered, "Correction applied." In that instant, every passenger blacked out simultaneously. Flight LD-207 landed safely at 9:12 a.m. Or rather, the plane was found parked at Gate 5A. With engines cooling, doors sealed, and no crew visible. No landing was recorded. No radios detected its descent. Airport personnel discovered the passengers unconscious in their seats. All 184 survived, but none remembered the final 20 minutes of the flight. Black box recordings from 8:52 a.m. to landing time were wiped clean. Only a constant, low-frequency hum remained. The man in 27B was gone. His seatbelt was fastened, the cushion still indented. TSA and FAA officials initiated an immediate lockdown. Passengers were separated, questioned, medically evaluated. Every passenger remembered boarding the plane. None remembered the man, except one, Diane Hartwell. She insisted 27B existed, that he moved wrong, that he brought something with him. Her testimony was dismissed as trauma-induced hallucination. Security footage from Gate C-12 was reviewed, frame by frame. At 7:14 a.m., the man should have appeared. He didn't. The footage showed a continuous feed, no anomalies, no glitch, no figure. Seat 27B's manifest entry 3 was overridden with a valid passenger name. A man who had boarded every other flight that week, including that morning in Chicago. but he was still in Chicago. He never flew to Atlanta. He denied having ever visited Gate C-12. A federal order sealed the entire case within 48 hours. Passengers were instructed not to discuss the incident. Some received non-disclosure agreements. Others quietly recanted their testimonies. Ruiz resigned 3 days later. Co-workers said she no longer recognized her own face in reflective surfaces. Hartwell disappeared the following month. Her apartment was found locked from the inside, belongings untouched. The only unusual item was the seat map from LD-207 pinned to her wall. Seat 27B circled in red. Fair internal documents classify case for 4D as resolved. Project Echo files classify it as unfinished. A final annotation on the archived report reads, Passenger 27B not identified. Passenger 14C remains unaccounted for. The black box hum has been detected on 3 unrelated commercial flights since 2001. Each time, it appears for exactly 27 seconds. Each time, Seat 27B registers weight even when empty. If a passenger boards your flight without existing, don't look at him. Don't speak to him. And whatever you do, don't sit in 27B.